Thank you, and hello to all my Italian friends. It's a really pleasure to be here in Italy again. The term digital natives is now almost 15 years old. And when I first began to think about it, it occurred to me that there were many people that I worked with, young people, who were doing things differently. So I thought about this and I wrote about it. Since that time, there has been some pushback, what we call pushback, because people have looked at young people and said they don't know everything about technology. And some older people know a lot about technology. So here's what I think today. The digital immigrant, the immigrant is someone who lived in two cultures. The old culture, call it if you wish, before the internet, and the new culture after the internet or after digital technology. And therefore they have ideas from the old culture as well as thoughts about the new culture. The natives grew up only in the new culture. So they only know a world that has an internet. They only know a world that has computers. They only know a world that has technology. And therefore, the attitudes are different. It's more of a cultural difference than it is a question of knowing all about technology. Because nobody is born knowing about technology. They have to learn. But the young people have a very different culture than the generation that came before them. Digital wisdom is the idea of putting together what the human brain does well. And there are many, many things that we all know that the human brain does well, from reasoning to inventing to imagination to telling stories. But there are many things that the human brain does not do that well that we need today. The human brain can't deal with trillions of data points. The human brain can't see very far into the future in terms of causation. And so the human brain certainly can't remember everything. So the digital wisdom, to me, is putting together what the human brain does very well with what technology does very well and even better. And marrying those two, or putting them together symbiotically in a way that gives us more power than we had before. Every new medium that comes along has to be learned. There is good television and there is bad television. There is good writing, there is bad writing. There are good images, there are bad images. There are many, many positive things to teach our children and for them to do and be creative. There are some dangers. What I think is important is to put the emphasis on the positive aspects of these technologies and to show children when they make mistakes that there are some mistakes. Just as I tell my kid, please don't put your full name online when you make a video. But my kid, who is 8 years old, wants to have his own YouTube channel because he makes his own YouTubes about the games he plays. That's fine. He should be able to do that because these tools make people very powerful in terms of being able to express themselves, much more powerful than kids could do at the same age with words. To express yourself with words, you have to be old and practiced and do this for many, 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 many years. To express yourself with images is something that you can do at a much earlier stage. What I talk about is futurecation. I came on these terms because last year my son had a teacher who only did pastucation. She was what I called a pastucator. She did all the right things for 50 years ago when I was in second grade. Everything was reading, everything was writing, but nothing had anything to do with the 21st century. She had computers, but they were not turned on. There was on the walls only writing, nothing printed out, nothing. And so it occurred to me that so much of our education is about the past. And that's because the past and the future used to be the same. But now the future is so different than the past that we had really better think about less past and more future in our education for the kids. The big question for educators is, how do we keep what is valuable from the past as we move to the future? And one good way to think about that is in terms of verbs and nouns. When we think of technology, we almost always think of nouns. We think of iPads, we think of PowerPoint, we think of Wikipedia. Should I use this? Shouldn't I use this? It's important to remember that those are nouns to do something, and that's the verbs. So the iPad may be used to communicate. Wikipedia may be used to investigate or to do research. PowerPoint may be used to present. The reason it's so important is because the verbs stay the same. The nouns, however, change very rapidly today. In the past, we had two nouns. We had the book and the teacher. Now, we have many, many nouns, and every year, sometimes every month, we have better nouns. So the question a teacher needs to ask is, what are the verbs that I expect my students to become better at, to practice and to master? And only when they know that should they ask, what are the best nouns today to master those verbs? And am I ready and willing and flexible enough to move to new nouns when they appear? Something that I have started talking about now is what I call TLPIG, the last pre-internet generation. The generation that I came from did not have a connected world in the sense that we have it now. The challenge is to learn how to behave and have a better society because we are networked together. And the best way to look at something like Facebook, in my opinion, is as an experiment. The first experiment. We have 1 billion people, 1/7 of the earth, on Facebook networked together. What do we do? How do we handle it? We don't know how to behave, but the young people, by experimenting, are learning. And we have to make sure that we understand those lessons that are learned, both the positive lessons and the negative lessons, and that we make it the best networked world that we possibly can.